Just Lucas's family this year, keeping it small. That was it. 6 words. No greeting, no explanation, just a text from my mother, Judith Carter, glowing on my phone screen like a slap across the face. I was sitting in my corner office on the 4th floor, glass windows looking out over the Hudson River, when my stomach sank so fast it felt like the floor had given way. I read it again, hoping I'd misread. But no, the words stayed there, cruel and efficient. Lucas, my older brother by 3 years, was the golden boy. He'd stayed in Indiana, taken over Dad's equipment shop, married his high school sweetheart, and had 3 kids who looked like they belonged in a holiday catalogue. He could mow the lawn, and they'd treat him like he'd invented grass. Me, I built something from nothing. I started with no money, no connections, just an idea and enough stubbornness to work myself raw. I built a logistics company, grew it brick by brick, and last year I sold it for $180 million. That's not bragging, it's fact. But my parents never mentioned it. To them I was still the odd son who left home and got too into computers. I leaned back in my chair, the city sprawled out beneath me, and that old ache bloomed again, the one that started with every forgotten birthday, every school award they ignored, every Thanksgiving where Lucas carved the turkey, while I got stuck at the folding card table. For years I swallowed it, but this time felt different. Maybe it was the years of therapy telling me not to chase what would never come. Maybe it was the quiet rage that built inside me, waiting for a moment like this. I didn't beg for a seat. I didn't ask why not me. I just typed one word back, enjoy, sent it. Then I set my phone down and stared out at the cargo ships inching across the Hudson. And for the first time in my life, I decided I wouldn't sit quietly on the sidelines, waiting for scraps. If they thought I was going to be invisible again, they had no idea what was coming. When you grow up as the other son, the shadows follow you everywhere. I was born and raised in Fort Wayne, Indiana, where Lucas Carter was practically crowned royalty before he could even drive. By 16, he was the starting quarterback who led Northside High to the playoffs. His picture was in the local paper. People bought him pie at the diner on State Boulevard, and strangers slapped him on the back like he'd already made the NFL. Me? I was the quiet one. I spent hours in the garage, tinkering with scraps, rusted motherboards from Goodwill, busted radios from yard sales. I loved the hum of old wires, the puzzle of making something broken work again. I'd rush into the kitchen, grease on my hands, and say, "Mum, I got 2 computers talking to each other downstairs." Judith barely looked up from her People magazine. "That's nice, Nathan. Did you hear Lucas might get scouted this year?" It was always the same. My achievements weren't even background noise. They were invisible. Teachers praised me for my problem solving, even called me a prodigy once. But at home, Dad would shrug and mutter, "Book smarts don't matter in real life. Your brother's got what it takes to run the shop." Even my birthdays carried the sting. When I turned 22, I called home, hoping for a celebration. Judith's voice crackled through the line. "Oh no, was that today? I'll make it up to you." She never did. What came instead, weeks later, was a Christmas card with Lucas's family, smiling in matching sweaters. No note, just the picture. I kept it, not out of love, but as a reminder of how easily they forgot me. At family dinners, I'd try to talk about Georgia Tech, where I'd earned a full-ride scholarship in engineering. Within seconds, Mom would interrupt. "Lucas is thinking of expanding the shop. Isn't that wonderful?" Everyone clapped, while my words trailed into silence. And when it was time to eat, guess who sat at the kids' table? Me, next to cousins, who thought the internet was just email. Those moments stacked like bricks. Little cuts that built into something heavier. a weight I carried into adulthood, making me question my worth, even when the world outside my family saw me differently. Looking back, it wasn't just neglect, it was erasure. And that text from Judith, after everything I'd built, felt like the final proof. To them, I was still the boy in the garage, unseen, unwanted, unnecessary. I still remember the smell of mildew in that one-room flat off Delmar Boulevard in St. Louis. I was 24, sleeping on an air mattress that hissed whenever I moved. The radiator rattled like it was choking, and every night I ate canned chili because eggs and toast felt like a luxury. But I had an idea, an app that could predict supply chain delays for small hospitals. It sounded laughable back then. Who cared about freight data until shelves went empty? But I saw the cracks before they split open. All it would take was one broken link in the chain, and patients would suffer. So I worked. 14-hour days. My fingers numb from typing code, my mind wired on gas station coffee. I failed twice, once with the wrong investor who nearly stripped me dry, and again when we scaled too fast. But through it all, I never missed payroll. My tiny team stayed because they knew I'd bleed before I let them go hungry. When the pandemic hit, everything changed. Hospitals were desperate. They needed ventilators, blood bags, PPE, and my system rerouted shipments before shortages became disasters. Suddenly I wasn't just some tech kid. I was a lifeline. Within 2 years, we managed logistics for 37 hospital systems across 3 states. We were invisible, yes, but essential. Then came the offer. A Fortune 100 company wanted to buy us out. At first, I thought it was a scam, but the wire transfer was real. Overnight, I had more money in my account than I knew what to do with. Enough to disappear if I wanted. So I did. I bought 40 acres outside Asheville, North Carolina. A blank stretch of land where the air smelled of pine and rain. I didn't hire celebrity architects or developers chasing square footage. I hired a builder I trusted, and together we shaped a timber frame lodge with a wraparound porch, exposed beams, and a stone fireplace wide enough to stand inside. I designed it, piece by piece, black walnut counters cut from the trees on the property, a library lined with leather-bound volumes, quotes from inventors and philosophers carved into the beams. It wasn't built for flash. It was built for peace, for permanence, for something no one could dismiss. And I didn't tell a soul. Not Lucas, not Mom or Dad, not even my cousins. Because this wasn't about finally impressing them, it was about creating a world they could never erase me from. That night, staring at Judith's text, I realized the irony. For years I had chased their approval, but here I was, with everything they once said didn't matter, and all they gave me was silence. After Judith's text, I let the silence stretch for days. But something inside me shifted. For once, I wasn't just hurt, I was furious, and that fury pushed me to do something bold. I scrolled through my contacts and called Mark, my cousin on Dad's side. He answered on the second ring, kids squealing in the background. "Hey Nate, what's up?" "You get invited this year?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Mark laughed bitterly. "Nope, just Lucas's crew. Your mum said it's immediate family only. First time in 30 years we're all cut out." Even Grandma Evelyn's pissed. She called me earlier, said she feels like they erased half the bloodline. That's when the decision crystallized. "You all want somewhere better?" I asked. There was a pause, then his voice dropped. "Where?" "My place in North Carolina, 40 acres, big enough for everyone." Silence. Then a low whistle. "You serious?" Dead serious. Within an hour, he texted back, "We're in." By the next morning, 10 RSVPs. Aunt Lila asked if she could bring her famous apple pie. One cousin offered to smoke a turkey. And then came Grandma's call. She didn't even say hello, just, "Tell me when to pack, Nathan." Her voice cracked something open in me. In all my years of showing up at their tables, nobody had ever asked to come to mine, until now. From that moment, I went all in. I hired a local chef with Appalachian roots who brought her own cast-iron pans. We stocked cabins nearby, filled guest rooms with fresh linens and added personal touches, bourbon and smoked almonds for Uncle Ray, crossword books and a magnifier for Aunt Lila, toy trucks for the twins. I wanted no one to feel like an afterthought. By Thursday, the property was alive. SUVs rolled up, one after another. Mark stepped out first, stared at the beams of the lodge and muttered, "Holy hell, this is yours?" "Every inch," I said, grinning. And then it began, a steady stream of cousins, uncles, friends, music on the back deck, kids racing down the halls, laughter echoing against the glass walls. By evening, we filled the great room, candles flickering across a table, long enough to fit everyone. No kids' table, no sidelines, no hierarchy. Grandma Evelyn tugged my sleeve halfway through dessert. Out in the hall, she took my hand. "You gave us back Thanksgiving," she whispered. "We needed this, more than you know." For the first time in my life, I wasn't sitting at someone else's table. I'd built my own, and they came to me. The morning after Thanksgiving, my phone buzzed non-stop on the nightstand. 6 missed calls from Mum, 3 from Dad, a single text from Lucas that read, "Really classy move." No punctuation, no warmth, just judgment dripping through the screen. I didn't answer. Instead, I went downstairs where the smell of coffee and bacon filled the lodge. Aunt Lila was setting up a puzzle on the card table, the twins were building forts out of couch cushions, and Mark was planning a hike by the lake. It felt like summer camp, not exile. For once, we weren't leftovers. We were the main event, but eventually I picked up the phone and called Mom. She answered on the first ring, her voice sharp. "Nathan, why didn't you tell us? Everyone's talking about your event." Even Pastor Miller mentioned it in his sermon this morning. "Do you realize how this makes us look?" I leaned back in the leather chair of my library, staring at the water through the glass wall. "You said you were keeping it small, so I made other plans." "That wasn't about you," she snapped. "We thought you'd be too busy. You're always working, and Lucas's family was easier to coordinate." "So you cut out Grandma, Uncle Ray, the whole family?" She huffed, like I was the unreasonable one. "You're blowing this out of proportion." From the next room, I heard the creak of Grandma Evelyn's chair by the fire. Then her voice cut through, steady and sharp as steel. "Put them on speaker, Nathan." I did. "What's this about?" Dad's voice rumbled through the line. Grandma didn't hesitate. "Robert, Judith, you've ignored this boy his whole life, acted like he was some burden you didn't know what to do with, and now you're shocked he built something without you. Be grateful he still let the family in." Dead silence. She pressed on. "Did it ever cross your minds that if you'd made space for him at your table, you'd be sitting at his now?" Dad muttered. "That's not fair." "No," Grandma shot back, her voice rising. "What's not fair is how Nathan was treated all these years. Overlooked, dismissed, forgotten. And yet he opened his doors when you shut yours." Mum's voice dropped to a whisper. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." "Then listen for once," Grandma said. "This isn't about a dinner, it's about who you choose to show up for." The silence that followed was heavier than any words. They didn't argue, they didn't apologize. They just sat there, stunned. I ended the call without another word, set the phone down, and let the quiet of the lodge fill me. For the first time in decades, the weight in my chest began to loosen. That weekend, the lodge felt like it had always belonged to us.
Cousins roasted marshmallows by the fire pit, Uncle Ray taught the kids how to fish in the lake, and Aunt Lila kept sneaking pies into the kitchen like we were stockpiling for winter. The air was thick with laughter, real conversation.
The kind of warmth I'd craved my entire life. By Sunday, someone created a group chat called Thanksgiving 2.0. Pictures poured in, kids sledding down the hillside on cardboard boxes, selfies in front of the stone fireplace, Grandma Evelyn holding court at the head of the table. One cousin wrote, "Best holiday in years, we're in again next time." Another added, "Nathan, you set a new standard, Lucas who?" For once, the Carter family's heartbeat wasn't tied to Lucas's perfect little world. It pulsed here, in Asheville, on the 40 acres I had built with my own 2 hands and an iron will. But the silence from my parents and Lucas didn't last long. On Monday morning, my phone lit up again. A message from Lucas. Didn't expect that. I get it though. Short, cryptic, almost like a surrender. Then Mom's text followed. "Can we come visit sometime? Just the 2 of us." Dad's was the strangest. "Looks nice. Proud of you." No question mark, no elaboration, like he was commenting on the weather. I didn't reply, not immediately. I'd learned something important over those days. Not every message deserves an instant answer. Some truths need space to breathe. When Christmas approached, I made a choice. I invited only my parents and Lucas's family. No cousins, no aunts, no distractions. Just us, face to face. If there was ever going to be a reckoning, it had to happen in the raw light of honesty. They arrived in Lucas's SUV packed tight with suitcases and tension. I met them at the lodge doors. Lucas stepped out first, his eyes sweeping the beams and stonework. His jaw tightened. "You really built all this?" "Every square inch," I said. No pride, no apology, just fact. Dinner that night started stiff, clumsy. But then, like the thawing of ice, the conversation deepened. I told them about the years I'd felt invisible, the birthdays forgotten, the nights I ate canned chili while building something that mattered. For once, they didn't interrupt. They listened. After dessert, Lucas pulled me aside. He didn't say much, never was the talker, but he put out his hand. His grip was firm, steady. "You did good, Nate. Real good." It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't redemption, but it was a start. A New Year's Eve found me standing on the dock behind the lodge, bourbon in one hand, the other buried deep in my coat pocket. The lake was glassy black under the winter sky, stars stretched across it like a spilled handful of diamonds. The wind cut sharp, but I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I wasn't weighed down by bitterness. I thought about the boy in the garage back in Fort Wayne, the kid with burnt fingers from soldering irons, who watched his parents brag about Lucas's touchdowns while his own victories went unnoticed. That boy had spent years wondering if any of it would matter, if he'd ever be more than a shadow in someone else's story. He didn't know it then, but every lonely night, with those broken radios, every moment of being overlooked was laying the foundation for this. Behind me, the lodge glowed warm through the tall windows. Inside, Grandma Evelyn sat by the fire with a blanket over her lap, the twins snoring in a pile of pillows on the floor. The house was alive with the family that chose to show up, the family that mattered. A few days earlier, Grandma had pulled me aside. Her voice was soft, but steady. "Nathan, I'm changing my will, the old farmhouse, the land, it's yours. You're the one who kept this family together when everyone else was too blind to see." I didn't know what to say. For years I'd chased scraps of recognition, and here she was, handing me something no money could buy. Legacy. I raised my glass toward the lake.
"Here's to the boy in the garage," I said quietly. "You made it." I didn't know what next year would bring. Maybe my parents would slip back into old habits. Maybe Lucas would retreat into silence again. Maybe not. But it no longer mattered. Because I wasn't waiting for a seat at their table anymore. I'd built my own, and it was big enough for anyone who ever made me feel seen. That was the rule now. Show up or don't. The door would always be open, but I'd never beg anyone to walk through it again. The wind howled across the lake, carrying my words into the night. For the first time in decades, I smiled into the cold, because I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living on my terms at my table.